Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com, here with your hurricane outlook and discussion for Saturday, August 22nd, 2015. Check it out. We have 3 yellow X's on our map today, plus the red hurricane symbol for Hurricane Danny out in the Atlantic. A lot to talk about, including Central Pacific tropical storm. I think it is. Maybe a depression. I think it's a storm. We'll see, right? It's going back and forth because it's having some serious trouble right now, but as I'm going to show you, it has massive potential for development later on, but that's Kilo here in the Central Pacific. We will get to that. First of all, a look at the 5-day graphical tropical weather outlook map. This is 97L, not going to amount to anything it looks at this point. Any inclement weather for Bermuda will quickly improve as this system moves away on out into the far reaches of the North Atlantic. Meanwhile, we have what will be Invest Area 98L, if not already. I couldn't find it on any of the sites yet as technically 98L, but that's what it will be. And then we have another system which will be 99L, and then we start over again with 90L after that, which there will probably be a few more after that's coming up. So let's take a look at what's going on with Hurricane Danny. I would argue that it's probably not a hurricane anymore. The hurricane hunters are out there checking it out in situ, as they say, meaning on site, and they will have the best data. But I can show you a few things that are obvious. First of all, it has no eye. The central dense overcast has become, even in the last few hours here, from this round look to a more oblong shape, and that's not healthy for tropical cyclones at all. The banding features are not quite as evident. There's still some, but they're not as well defined as they were yesterday when this was a Category 3. Also, you notice very distinctly the upper level winds are starting to fan out more in a northeast direction instead of in all directions. So the outflow is definitely getting choked on the southwest and western side as strong southwesterly winds come across the top of this system and displaces the convection away from the center a little bit. The shear, and that's what we call this, wind shear is the change in wind direction as you go up in the atmosphere, and it's not strong enough to completely decouple Danny's convection from the low-level center yet, but that may happen. You can clearly see that the shear is beginning here in this picture. Now, as Danny moves on to the west-northwest with time, definitely going to weaken down to a tropical storm. Tropical storm watches are in effect for portions of the Northeast Caribbean islands. And as far as impact goes, you guys definitely need the rain down there, though I don't think this is going to provide very much, especially since it's a small system, it's weakening. Nevertheless, there should be a few inches of rain that could fall across this region. I don't know, 2 to 4 inches total, something like that is a good bet. Locally higher amounts maybe here in Puerto Rico if the system can get close enough. The good side of that is, even though you really need the rain, there won't be too much rain in too short amount of time, it appears. The other issue will be large waves that will be propagating out in front of Danny, and those waves will arrive in the Caribbean islands over the next several days, probably 6 to 8 feet, so maybe some good surfing weather as Danny approaches. And then, of course, get out of the water as conditions get worse and worse. From this point on, it's hard to say what's going to happen with Danny beyond about the 3-day time frame. Days 4 and 5, highly uncertain. This could open into a tropical wave, and it would all be over about right here. Or, as some of the intensity models are starting to suggest, Danny could get through what I'm about to show you is this gauntlet, if you will, and it might try to survive. The intensity forecast was mentioned as being uncertain to some degree in the latest outlook from 11 a.m. this morning from Dr. Jack Bevan, who wrote the discussion, but don't read too much into that just yet. I know there's a lot of people in Florida and, of course, in the Bahamas that would be keenly interested, let's say, should Danny survive, and for good reason. But we won't go down that path just yet. And let me show you why. It's for many reasons, but I'm going to point out why it's a very strong argument against getting too worried about it. So this is the wind shear chart, a fantastic product from the University of Wisconsin. This is the east coast of the United States right here, pretty easy to see. All right, and then here are the Greater Antilles, the Lesser Antilles over here. And so what we're looking at is sort of a combination of the upper level wind flow and the amount or the wind speed associated with those upper level winds. And because this is a water vapor image, you can see areas of moisture as indicated by the white coloring in here, and areas of lower humidity or precipitable water in the atmosphere as indicated by the darker color areas. So here's Danny, and the winds are starting to increase out of the southwest. I showed you that, and you can see it on the water vapor, stretching those clouds out like cotton candy being pulled apart. And those upper level winds are pretty strong as Danny gets closer, 30 knots or so. But check it out, it is interesting. This little band of 30 knots of shear right in here is just that. It's kind of little. And Danny could move through, and then it's 20 knots. And, you know, there's a lot of dry air in here, but the shear really drops off. I mean, that's a 5 right there. My eyes don't deceive me. 5 knots of shear is not destructive. And we'll see. I think the dry air, though, and it's not so much African dust. There's some Saharan air layer still embedded in here, but you have sort of this sinking cyclonic flow in the atmosphere, or subsidence, and that's not healthy for tropical cyclones at all. So if it gets through all of this, there's some northerly shear that it might have to deal with, and more dry air. I don't know. I mean, the odds are that this will fade away. It's so small, but there is a chance, just a small chance, that it could survive and end up somewhere in this vicinity on day 5, 6, something like that. Maybe day 7. I don't think it's a week away, but we'll watch it. That's why you don't just say, oh, it's over, forget about it. But at the same time, we don't go painting in, you know, that a category whatever hurricane is headed for X location. That is not prudent to do at all. So we'll watch and see what happens. One thing going in its favor, Danny is currently located in this area here, increasing tropical cyclone heat potential all along that forecast track. And then it starts to get pretty high here towards the middle part and the upper half of the scale. So it'll definitely have very warm water temperatures. And the only other thing I can say, if it avoids these land masses through here and comes at a track about like this, then clearly it's not going to have land interaction to disrupt the circulation. So there are some things in its favor, but as I point out one more time, I think this obvious upper trough carved out in here and the dry air embedded in there and that cyclonic flow is going to go against Danny. So the forecast models, a whole bunch of them, fairly tightly clustered overall, with a cone kind of like that, if you will. Missing, most of them missing, I'd say a majority of the models missing land entirely. So we'll see. The intensity, I was referencing that. It's interesting. We're sitting at about a Category 1 right now, steady decrease in the intensity overall by several of the models, but several of them starting to curve back up again. So, I mean, I'll take my telestration away. You can kind of see sort of two camps starting to develop here. One that has steady weakening, and then another one that kind of reaches a plateau and starts to curve back up, and some of them curving up considerably. So we will watch this for sure. That's all we can do at this point. Next, we have quite a bit. Remember I told you there'll be some other interest in the pipeline. Well, here's Danny, and you can see the Saharan air influence is really diminishing. This is 98L to be, if not already, probably going to be 99L at some point, and there is more energy sitting over Africa ready to come off. There's definitely some Saharan air influence still out there, but I'm telling you, it's on the lower end of the scale over here, so we may just have ourselves a busy end of August and into September. A different look at the tropical waves, and Danny included in here as a hurricane, tropical wave, probably another one, and then more energy developing over eastern Africa. So we'll have a lot to watch. Meanwhile, in the Pacific, now it says tropical depression kilo. I do want to check something real quick to see what's going on with that. Yep, it is tropical depression. So it was a storm, then it weakened, so now it's down to tropical depression, which doesn't matter because it looks like it's going to intensify. And of course, there's a lot of interest out here in Hawaii. Hurricane Iniki in 1992 passed by this region with quite intense winds, which resulted in some of that amazing video of those roof panels just lifting off that house. If you haven't seen that, YouTube search Hurricane Iniki roof coming off, something like that, in Hawaii, and you'll see what that can do. And so folks in Hawaii, usually when the hurricanes come from the east, in fact almost always, they weaken by the time they get to the Hawaiian Islands, especially the Big Island. But when they come in from the south and cut across, that's when they can be a problem. So there's a lot of interest, as you would imagine. Luckily, it looks like this will be far enough away from a majority of the Hawaiian Island population that even if this comes to pass and goes right over the western portion of the chain, it wouldn't affect the largest majority of the population areas. And that's of concern because some of these models getting up here to category 3 and 4 intensity, that certainly starts to raise your eyebrows a little bit. This is the official forecast track for the next 5 days, day 5 position right here. And, you know, so what happens? Does this curve around? And we can just speculate a little bit. Does it come across like this? Does it come at a, you know, I mean, there's a lot of ifs. I mean, it could come in and then turn back out. There's a lot that could happen. Luckily, we are not seeing something, you know, like this, which will be a real problem, especially with that intensity forecast. So this is where things stand now, and we have plenty of time to watch and see what happens. Certainly, if you're in Hawaii, you have interest there, know people there, yeah, make sure they have an eye on what's going on with Kilo as it heads in the general direction of especially the western Hawaiian Islands. All right, well, that's it for me for today. You're up to date on what's happening in the tropics. We'll keep an eye on Danny and what's happening with Kilo in the Central Pacific, and I'll have blog posts tomorrow and another video update tomorrow as well, and we'll track the progression of all the goings on in the tropics for you, and hopefully you'll feel more at ease understanding what's going on. Thanks so much for tuning in. I am Mark Studduth for HurricaneTrack.com. I'll talk to you again tomorrow.